So, to get down to the question of who am I, we're going to be acting like Thoth a little bit, right? Remember the one with the long beak? He has the long beak, right? And he breaks everything down into the smallest bit, and that's what we're going to do. So, to understand who I am, who you are, realize that we first have to get an idea of what consciousness is, right? So, to get into what consciousness is, the truth is nobody really knows. We have the smartest people in the world all arguing over it. There are different Nobel laureates arguing over what consciousness is. So I'm going to bring you down to the riddle of consciousness, and you guys decide what it means to you. The first thing we need to understand is that consciousness is not in the skull. It is not confined to the human skull. If at best, it's all of the senses working together to collectively sense information, and all of that information is processed inside the brain. And we're processing everything up into the mind. And as a matter of fact, there's nothing that you know outside of the mind. The only thing you know about the world is what the information and the data that's collected by the five senses. And all of that information is an electrical impulse that goes through your nerves and your central nervous system, and it ends up in the pineal gland in the center of your skull. And the pineal gland is considered the seat of the soul. It is the mainframe, I guess you will, for the brain. It's kind of like the main processing point. So we think. We don't really know. That's the best we can determine. And it's interesting that the pineal gland is literally your third eye, for those who aren't aware. It even has a retina, just like the eyeballs do. So it's an eye at the center of your brain that's used for seeing. But what is it seeing? It's seeing inside of the mind. So you have two eyes that see outside of the mind. I left the reverb on. And you have one eye that sees inside the mind. That's a little better, right? Not so mysterious. Sorry about that. Yeah, so you have two eyes that are looking outside of the mind, and they are taking in data. But you have this third eye at the center of your mind, the pineal gland, that's used for looking inwards. All right? And that's all we really know about consciousness. We know that the experience, the way that the pineal works, is as you gather information into the brain, you through an experience, you file that experience away, and then all subsequent experiences that happen to you, in order to even perceive an experience, you have to first process the data of what you're collecting. It goes through the central nervous system into the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is going through the memory systems of the brain, and it's comparing the memories of past experiences to the current experiences. So it says, this is what was before, this is what I'm currently experiencing. And this juxtaposition between the two is what it's calling the perceived reality before you. So everything that you're perceiving goes through a comparison to a previous experience already inside the mind. Are you guys with me so far? Right? There is nothing that you've ever experienced that you haven't processed this way. So the reason this is really important is because all of our experiences are totally different, are they not? Right? We all have different types of lives, different types of cultural situations from the time that we're born until the time we grow up, and they call for a wide variety of experiences to happen to us. The experiences of a person growing up in New York City is going to be very different from a person growing up in the Midwest. A person growing up with very wealthy parents is going to be very different from the parents who don't have anything. Parents that are very wise and knowledgeable is going to be a different experience for the child growing up in a household where wisdom isn't really important. So because of all these different varieties of experiences, we're all perceiving the world very differently. It's more than just it's more than we just have a different attitude about life. We are literally experiencing and seeing the world in a very, very different way. And what we're perceiving is a totally different image than what our friends are seeing. There are a few things that we can agree upon that are beholden to the reality before two people. And those things we agree upon is what reality is. But to presume that the other person is perceiving reality exactly the way you're perceiving it is a misnomer. Yeah, so depending on who you're with, we've all been in a relationship with other people and or have really, really close friends, and then sometimes you're just really astonished at the way somebody sees something, right? It just blows our mind sometimes, like a person be very, very upset over a certain thing that you don't really find that upsetting, or not appreciating certain things that you find are very, very sentimental or amazing. This is why. This is because we're all seeing the world very, very differently. We're all seeing only a comparison contrast between the life that we've had before up to that point and compared to the current data being taken in. So we're all seeing a very, very, very different thing. And presume that we're sharing the same reality. You guys with me so far? Yes? Okay. All right, now I need you to just hold on to that thought right there. Okay? Everything I've just told you there about the mind and the way that it works is really all we really know about the way the mind works. There are speculations beyond that, but that's pretty much the only consensus that anybody's come across, is that. And we don't really know where consciousness is located. There are some of the very brightest minds in the world that believe that consciousness is everywhere, and that we're simply taking in the experience of consciousness through our senses. And there are others that believe that consciousness is a combination of the five senses. But what we know unequivocally is that consciousness does not reside in the skull. And the reason we know this is because we know the processing power of the human brain. And as impressive as it is, as amazing as it is, just sheer calculations of what it would take for a person to catch a ball, so to speak, or do something with the motor skills. There's just not enough data stream to make that even work. None of the calculations work out. So clearly the information has to be coming from somewhere else or processed in a way we don't understand yet. Okay? All right, now hold on to that. Boy, we got a nice chat room. You guys are awesome, just chatting away up there. You're awesome. All right, so take all of that about consciousness and just hold on to that for just a second and just put that in a placeholder next to you. And let's talk about reality. Because reality, believe it or not, is just as mysterious. We like to think that scientists have it all figured out and we know why everything is the way it is. But the truth is, nobody knows anything. Nobody knows anything at all. At all. So, and when we start to break this down, you're going to see very clearly that science is just as much of a religion as religion is. There's no difference between the two. They both are saying the exact same thing, but using different words to say it. And I know that's a lot for people. Some people out there might be religious. Some of you might be very, very beholden to science, but the truth is they're both religions. Science is scientism, and religion is religion, and theosophy. So between the two, let's break it down a little bit. So science would say that consciousness is in the skull, and that's where it resides, and it's a product of the brain, and that the brain is the result of evolution that was started at the beginning of the Big Bang, 13.9 billion years ago, and that date keeps changing all the time, right? So 13.8 or 9 billion years ago, I think the last time I checked. So they believe, and the scientists are able to calculate all of this back. They're able to extrapolate evolution going backwards, and they can calculate it all the way down to just nanoseconds after the Big Bang. That's about as close as they can get. And beyond that, nobody has a clue. Nobody has a clue. It only goes up to that point, and we call that the Big Bang. And the Big Bang is to suggest that in the beginning there was nothing, and then there was this giant explosion that came from nothing that we call the singularity. And from the singularity, all time and space was created. As the explosion exploded outwards, time and space was created, and all of the contents of the universe were created. So yes, the current scientific consensus is that all of the matter of the universe was once all squished up in an inconceivably tiny point. So imagine like taking tinfoil, right? And you crumble up tinfoil, right? You can make it smaller and smaller and smaller, put more pressure on it. Imagine the stress you'd have to put onto the tinfoil to fold it up to something about this big. You hit it with a hammer, just keep pushing, all that force to get this big sheet of tinfoil down to this little tiny speck, right? Crazy, right? Now imagine all of the matter of the entire universe being squished down into this tiny, tiny subatomic singularity. And from there is where all of the matter in the world came from, right? It sounds ridiculous, right? It sounds, when you break it down like that, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. But that is the scientific argument. I'm putting it in layman terms. It could become a lot more complicated than that, but that's essentially the gist, right? None of the scientists have any idea where this comes from. They don't know what was before. They don't know what caused the singularity, and they don't know where the stuff from the singularity came from. The best they can do is say it came from another universe, which is just like not really an answer. It's just to speculate on an idea, right? Now, dualistically, religion is equally lost in the sauce when it comes to trying to figure out where all this comes from. So, from the religious perspective, we say that everything came from God, that there is not one thing that didn't come from God. All right? All things come from God. And that God is an all-knowing being that birthed all of this entire world into consciousness through what we call the Holy Spirit. So you've got science on one hand telling us the story about all of the matter of the universe coming from one tiny speck, subatomic speck. So all of the matter in the universe, planets, suns, galaxies, billions and billions of them squished up into this tiny little speck. Couldn't hold it anymore, and poof, right? That's their idea. And religious says that that God is omnipotent and the center of all consciousness, and that we all came from Him. So they're both saying that life is incredibly precious, and all things come from one thing. So can you see that they're both saying exactly the same thing? They're just using different words. They argue and they argue and they argue, but they're both saying the same thing. So you can break science down and say, the laws of thermodynamics prevent scientists from saying where the singularity comes from, because energy cannot be created or destroyed. So without energy being created or destroyed, without the energy being created from something that was destroyed, then there's no explanation for the singularity. So it's all unknown. The best we can say is that a miracle took place. There was a miracle. It doesn't matter which lens you're looking through, whether you're an atheist or whether you're religious. A miracle took place, and there was something that took place that blew out, and because of what happened, we are here now experiencing this reality. Now, we can detail that out to unending levels of detail and talk about all the subsequent things that took place to bring us here. But is it not equally miraculous to just say that we're here? Right? The other thing about this is that both religion and science, they speak to us through allegory. There's nothing that they talk about that isn't an allegory. There is no science that speaks without allegory, and there's no religion that speaks without allegory. Isn't that curious? It's pretty interesting, right? And both sides all of the allegory is based on assumptions. The assumption is that we're here now, and there has to be something that brought us to the here and now. That's the assumption. So what I want you to kind of see here is that what science represents from the here and now is that science represents the left analytical brain. It is the left mind way of looking at things. It is the rational mind. It is the mind that puts everything into order to understand it, right? And religion is the right brain way of looking at things. That's the right brain perspective, which is creative, intuitive, it's full of love, spirit, excitement, and the details don't matter. The details are unimportant to the right brain, because the right brain accepts what is. The right brain accepts what is because it's always creating new, where the left brain is processing what the right brain has created, right? Which is a fractal that we can see in everything, if you really look at it. In electricity, the positive electricity, which is the masculine, which is the left brain, chases the negative energy, which is the feminine, right? Which is the right brain, right? That's a fractal. It's not only an analogy, but it's a fractal of what's taking place. And of course, it's not always the case, but it's the general case, right? So, getting back to where all this came from, I'm going to propose an idea to you. What if the singularity has always existed? That it's part of a dualistic system. That because you have something, you have to have a nothing. That you can't have something without nothing, because they are two sides of the same coin, right? The singularity has always been here. It's always been here. It just is. There is no beginning, there's no end, because it sits outside of time. It is the creator of time. All of time is inside of the singularity, and the singularity is held in nothing. It is nested in nothing. If you spend time to meditate with it, you'll realize that the yin-yang has infinite depth, because its story is woven into all of the things that we know about the world. Because we only know the world through duality. That's the way consciousness works. Consciousness divides and then compares what was before and what is after, right? It compares to what was previously experienced to what the new experience is. That's right, Michelle's sticking it up there. You guys are awesome. What's really important is when you look at the yin-yang, where do you guys see yourself identified with? Do you have an identity to the yin-yang? For those of you who don't know, some people say I'm the white, some people say I'm the black, some people say I'm the whole thing. The truth of the yin-yang is you are the whole. You are both. It's the truth of the whole. Are we not all? Well, we are. But let's not just assume that. Let's realize that, right? And that's what we're doing here. We're stripping it down to realize that. So let's recap here. We have no idea what consciousness is, and yet it exists. And we have no idea what brought reality here, and yet it is here, right? And all of our best science, and all of our best philosophers, and all of our best theologians, nobody really has a clue, right? Nobody has a clue. But what we do know is that this moment is here, and it's a miracle, right? And we know that the experience of what is here is dualistic in nature. And the reason it's dualistic in nature is because the way the mind perceives reality is through dualism. It splits reality and compares it to what was previously experienced. That's how it processes the information, right? So we like to think that we want to move to a utopia that is beyond all of these dualities, right? Because it's the dualities that torture us. It's the this is good, this is bad, this is black, this is white, this is hot, this is cold, this tastes good, this tastes bad, right? All these different things. This person is mean, this country is bad, this one's this, right? We separate everything, and we put a value on it based on where we are identified on the spectrum of duality. So you've got the spectrum of duality of, let's say, good and bad, and then somewhere on this line we've identified where we are on this line. And depending on where we've identified on this line, we think that this is good and we think that this is bad. So if you've identified to closer to the bad, then you think that good is bad, right? And you think that bad is good. And so what I'm getting at is that nothing is perceived without duality. And this is what the Kybalion means when it says that all truths are but half-truths. All truths are only half-truths. Because the full picture is the full duality of things. And there's no thing that is not dualistic in nature. The reason that no thing is dualistic in nature is because we perceive all things through consciousness, which is dualistic in nature. It's incapable of seeing anything outside of dualism. Are you guys with me so far? We're getting to who am I, but we have to break down consciousness, right? Are you guys with me on where the consciousness is? So we wish we had this utopia where everything we can all just get along. The problem is identity. It's identity that's keeping this dualism alive. Unfortunately, it's not possible to experience the world without identity, unless you can transcend identity. And that's what who I am is getting to. We can't have a butterfly without a mosquito, right? The beauty of the butterfly depends on a nasty, blood-sucking mosquito, right? You cannot have a man without a woman. You cannot have a liberal without a conservative point of view, right? If we only knew one thing, then we wouldn't even have a way of saying it's conservative or liberal. You have to have the two things to compare, right? Can you see how they depend upon one another to even exist? And can you see how beautiful it is when you can see the world that way? That without the dualism, it doesn't even exist, right? Exactly, Michelle, the contrast. The contrast. Without the contrast and the comparison, it doesn't happen. Because that's what's required. That is what is required for the mind to even perceive. You guys with me? Awesome. All right, so I'm going to get into this next part of who am I? And this is going to get more like meditative here. So before I get into that, if you have any questions, lay it on me now. Because we've just kind of defined what consciousness is and what consciousness isn't. And it's important you guys are able to hold on to that. Can you see that consciousness, in the way I'm describing it, is a continuum also, stretching all the way back to the beginning of time? That the singularity is the birth of consciousness. That initial Big Bang in the beginning is the light of consciousness birthing into being. Is it whose consciousness? It's not my consciousness. It's not your consciousness. It's simply consciousness. So science would say that consciousness comes from the brain, right? And they can backpedal evolution to say that everything came from the Big Bang, right? Without the Big Bang, consciousness would not happen inside the human brain, right? And religion would say that their perspective is that God first imagined the world and then spoke the world into existence, did he not? So what we're talking about is consciousness and divinity and singularity are all the same thing. You guys with me? Because singularity is outside of time. Therefore, consciousness is outside of time. Which is a heavy, heavy thought, which is why I'm going slow here. All right? If you really allow yourself to think about that, that is a very, very heavy thought. Because that means that you are older than dirt. Quite literally. We all are. We're older than the earth. I saw somebody, I think Paige wrote that we are the earth. Yes, we are all products of the earth in the physical realm. But from the metaphysical perspective, we're something much older, something much, much deeper. And it's the mind of the One. It's the mind of God that was birthed at the singularity. And it's the mind of God that's perceiving the reality now. And it's perceiving it through your eyes. It's perceiving it through your ability to divide, label, and separate in duality. That's how it's perceiving. And the way that you're perceiving through that duality, again, is you're dividing it, comparing it to your personal memories, and then the result is the experience that you're seeing. So this is why it's important for the mind of consciousness, the mind of all, to see it through so many different perspectives. Because we're all showing the truth, are we not? The way I perceive the world is different from the way you perceive the world. But they are both true. All perspectives are true. All truths are true, but they are half-truths. Right? Yes, Vedant, it is the mind of God, the mind of the One. There is only the One, as I'm going to show you here. You guys with me? Okay, we're good. All right, so take a minute to just really, really, again, get in touch with your room. Just take a big breath in. And I want you to look around all the things in your room. And I want you to think about your family. I want you to think about all of your pets. Think about the things that you love. And think about your life. And I want you to really, really grab onto that right now. Okay? Again, it's all going to fall away in a second. And it's important that you have something to hold on to. Right on. So who am I? So the world we're perceiving through an identity on that spectrum, right? We have the spectrum of duality, good and bad, and it's a duality across all things imaginable, and it's an identity across all things unimaginable. You've identified yourself somewhere in relation to what we're thinking about, and you've identified to a place in there. You don't like fish, for example. You think of a fish. You place your identity closer to not liking fish. So your attitude about fish is going to be different than the person who loves fish, right? And it's this truth with every single thing you can imagine. Everything. And to make it a little bit more ineffable is that you're perceiving the world through this identity that only knows how to ask one question. This identity looks through its eyes, looks at the world, and compares it to the memory in the mind. And the only question it ever asks is, how is this relevant to me? It's the only question. And it asks this question millions of times a day. How is this relevant to me? It may not be in those words, but that's the question it asks. How is this relevant to me? Every person you meet, how is this person relevant to me? Every situation, how is this relevant to me? Yes, you are the actor on the stage of consciousness. Yes, absolutely, Aries. Yes, Veda, everyone has its own vision, so just accept it. Yes, we got to be compassionate with everyone's perspective, because there is no objective truth. There is only subjective truth. There's my subjective truth, your subjective truth, and what we call objective truth is almost insignificant how small it is. Yes, there are smacks of solipsis in this. That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm going slow, and I want you to be careful here. Okay? Yes. So here we are in the center of the reality, and we're only perceiving through duality. And we're only asking the question, how is this relevant to me? Now, in opposition to that identity called the ego, that asks that eternal question, how is this relevant to me? That question is answered by the thing that we call the superego. And this is the ego projecting itself onto what it's entertaining and looking at and being inquisitive about. And the ego is projecting itself out to identify with it, to have this comparison contrast of dualities between what I thought was good and bad and what currently is good and bad. That way I can decide how I feel about it. Oh, yeah, the ego. This is the ego. But it's really, really important to realize that you're not the ego. The ego is just a tool. And the tool asks one question: how is this relevant to me? It's a very shallow question, isn't it? And we wonder, we get so mad when people come into our lives and they have agendas or they're trying to get something out of us or whatever, right? It's nature. It's just nature. It's how we're wired. We're wired to be cooperative. The other thing to realize too is that everything that you're seeing and experiencing is not only seen through the eyes of this ego, but it's also seen in comparison to the superego, which is the reality in front of you and the identity that it takes on. And these two identities have conspired against you, and they've conspired against me as well. They want to live. Think of it like a Tesla car and autopilot, right? The ego is like an autopilot, and the way that it autopilots your body is it communicates with the superego on the outside, because they're one and the same thing. They're really just mirrors of each other. And with this mirror, it's navigating your life. It's navigating all of your life because it is assumed to be you. And you have allowed it to be the director of the show. Because we haven't even realized that the ego is the one that's driving. We think that we're driving because we've identified with the ego. But the point of this exercise today, and this is a thought experiment, to disidentify with the ego. Nope, it's not really about selfish so much, because selfish is a little bit of a deep subject, because that's to presume other, right? It is selfish in the sense that it's going to require selfishness for you to get in touch with who you are. Because this whole entire trip is about self-worth. And we are raised in a culture who tries to take that self-worth out of us, right? We're in a reality where there is an adversary of energy that wants to keep this a secret. And it does everything possible to diminish self-worth from us. So in a sense, you are going to have to get some of that selfishness back to get your self-worth back. But you're going to find that once you fill that self-worth up, that compassion is the greatest feeling in the world. It's better than anything you think you might be chasing with your ego. Okay? All right. So everything that you think about, you know about yourself, culture is put there. Everything. There's not one independent thought that you have about yourself. It's pretty scary, right? Because we all like to think that we know ourselves, but we don't. The culture has defined who you are because the ego is just running a program. It's running a script, and that script is culture. And that script of culture is all of your habits. It's your language. It's your thoughts, because we think in a language, right? It's your ideals. It's your standards. It's your dreams. So if you remove culture, you really can't do any of those things, right? If we have no culture, then there are no habits, there are no words, and because there's no words, there's no thoughts. You have no ideal for what you want, and you have no standards for what you want. Right? Cult. Yes, absolutely, cult. Culture is a cult. Culture is not your friend, in the words of Terence McKenna. Culture is not your friend. So, who are we then? Right? Are we the ego? This being that sees everything through these words and through all these habits, right? What is your identity really? You know, if you ask people who they are, if I was to ask most people who I am to them, ask them the question, the most important question. Most people don't ask themselves this question. So it's very surprising to them when they can't find the answer. And this is going to be a deep one for you. Most people would try to identify themselves with their nationality, right? I'm American, I'm European, I'm French, I'm Spanish, right? I'm Canadian, Shout out to Paige. And some of you are going to be identified with your career, right? I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, construction worker, I'm a plumber, I'm a writer, right? I'm a teacher. That's who I am, right? But you think about it a little bit more and you go, no, that's not what I am. I'm not what country I live in, and I'm not what career I do. I'm something so much deeper than that, right? I'm a mother, or a father, or a son, or a brother, or a sister, right? Those are also identities of culture. They feel good, they're very nice, but they're not true. This is why I'm asking you to get in touch with the things that you love, right? Because one by one, they're all kind of breaking down, aren't they? One layer below that, we say, okay, I'm a man or I'm a woman. We identify with gender, right? Some of us are neither or both. Yeah. Some of us are identified with race. Maybe you're black or white, or Spanish, or Chinese, or European, right? Sometimes we'll be identified with the things that we love. If we're passionate about a hobby, maybe we're identified with that. I'm a singer. I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I'm a painter. I'm a poet. Right? And some of us are identified with dreams. Maybe we share a dream. Maybe we haven't fully realized that dream yet, but we're identified with that dream of becoming. So we've gone through a pretty long list of things that we could possibly be identified with to say this is who I am. But when I really break it down here, they seem kind of flimsy, don't they? It's not a whole lot there. I mean, if this hasn't wowed you yet, I want you to really, really take a moment to think about what we've broken down here. We've broken down all of the things that you think are holding you in the world, all the things we take for granted as things that hold us, they hold us up as a being. We believe that we're a being living in a cosmos that has time that stretches back 13.8 billion years. We believe that we are creatures living on an earth. Are we a creature living on the earth? Is that who you are? Are you your body? Is that who you are? Right, more labels. Labels inside of labels forever. And when you remove the labels, there's not a whole lot left. The that I am, we're going to get into. Because the that is the beingness. It is the action. And what is the action? No action. The action is non-action, pure beingness. America, you've been having this lesson all week and stuff is getting crazy over here. Yes, your world is going to get very crazy. The more you entertain these things, you are going to have some crazy things happen to you. You're going to have wild synchronicities. Crazy coincidences that are going to blow your mind. Some of you will probably have very wild dreams. They might even be strange dreams that make you feel uncomfortable. Because what we're doing is we're breaking down the fabric of reality. We're killing the ego. We're breaking it all down. We're killing all of these thoughts, all of these tools, all these mechanisms that the ego uses to pretend like this is a thing happening. But they're just labels. They're just words, right? We've broken everything down by words, and they're just words with no validity at all. No thing. So, am I the body? Is that who I am? We've removed culture, removed language, removed our relationships, we've removed our passions and dreams and activities and talents, right? So with all that gone, am I the body? Well, I don't know. The body's kind of made up of about 100 trillion little tiny particles, is it not? It's made up of cells. You got organs with a mind of their own. Stomach will definitely let you know when it's hungry. Right? Your muscles will let you know when you've had enough. Yeah. But you're not the body. Are you the brain? Are you the heart? When we identify with ourselves, we point to ourselves, right? Very rarely do we say, I'm Jack, I'm Susan, right? But we point here, we point to the heart when we identify ourselves. Hi, I'm this, right? So do we live in the heart? Is this who we are, the heart? When we're hungry, we're thinking we're stomach, we point to our stomach. Are you your stomach when you're hungry? Does consciousness move from the heart to the stomach? Does consciousness move from the heart to the groin when you're horny? Some people would say, yeah, that's who I am. That's not who you are. So, if you're not the body, and you're not the organs, and you're not the cells in your body, are you the DNA? Is that who you are? Well, DNA is made up of a bunch of atoms, right? All of these atoms working together, creating this structure with all of this information. And what is information? Information is just data, words, essentially. It's information. So you're not your body, You're not the organs. You're not the cells in your body. You're not the DNA of your body. Are you the atoms of your body? Are you the particles that make up your body? Well, I don't know, because everything we know about atoms is that they're 99.999% empty space. Even the atoms aren't solid. Not only are they 99.9% empty space, but they often, the subatomic aspects of an atom will pop in existence and pop out of existence randomly. So if you were one single atom popping in existence and popping out of existence, is that who you are? Where do we go from here? Who am I? I'm not a mother or a father. I'm not a businessman or a teacher. I'm not a son or a daughter. I'm not a man or a woman. I'm not a race. I'm not my passions. I'm not my body. I'm not my organs. I'm not my cells. I'm not the DNA. I'm not the atoms of the DNA. So why get out of bed? Because we're having fun. Are you not having fun, Aries? Come on now. I'm having fun. There's a reason. Yes, Michelle. I am love. That is what I am. That's what I am. I am the miracle itself. That is who and what I am. I am the miracle that nobody can define, that nobody can put a label on. Not science, not religion, not yourself. You are that which transcends all of those labels. Because we've just seen how completely invalid all of those labels are. They're just words. And those words only have one intention, which is to divide and juxtapose. And we call that ourself. Which is why we've identified with the ego. We've identified with the tool that's cutting things in half and compartmentalizing them. That's who we think we are, but it's not who we are. It's just the tool of the mind to experience anything at all, because without the ego doing that, there's no experience. Everything is one. Everything is singular at that point. And if there's singular, then there is no other. There's only one. Only oneness. I'm hoping that those of you who are following me here should feel very, very light right now. You should feel like you're floating right now. You might be a little bit afraid, but don't be afraid. And the reason you don't have to be afraid is just because this is only one aspect to life, because I've just defined it as part of duality. I forgot my truth. Two things are true. But two things are true at the same time, are they not? The experience of life, The world out there, the world in front of our eyes, this world, which is very real, right? Monday, you're going to have to go to work, right? It's going to feel very real sitting in traffic, right? But at the same time, there is another truth. And that truth is that nothing is real at all. That nothing exists at all. It's just a bunch of stuff happening. It's just a random, miraculous point of experience happening. And we categorize it and we label it just so we can feel better about being here. Because the analytical mind, the left mind, the masculine mind, needs that security. It needs to understand something to feel okay. Whereas the creative spirit, the feminine mind, is just okay with what is. It's just completely okay. But it's also restless. It's restless for change. Right? Can you see how true that is in relationships between men and women? Right? Between masculine and feminine? Can you see the fractality of it? That it is not analogy, but fractality. An echo of the principles of the singularity, which is duality. So yes, it's the point is to sit here and see both things at the same time, right? And one second. That both things are true simultaneously. That you're both here and not here at the same time. If you look out into the dream, it seems very, very real, and it is real. It'll be whatever you guys want it to be, and as detailed as you wish to make it. The music is perfect tonight? Right on. Awesome. This music is the 741 hertz solfeggio if you want to go to sleep to it later tonight. Michelle says, humans have a hard time holding opposite beliefs simultaneously. Right. They do. And that's what this is to teach you. That's what this lesson is about. It's when you come across all things, try to use feeling upset about something as your trigger, right? Try to train the pineal gland to wake up when you're triggered over something, to see the truth of the whole. Because if you see the truth of the whole, there's nothing to get upset about. You just, oh, God, that's right. I can't have the shitty experience unless it has a positive experience, right? And this is also your motivation to stay very zen during things, right? To keep your attitude and your experience very this, right? Just instead of huge crests and troughs where life is great and then scary and great and scary, right? Just try to stay here, because there is no good without a bad and no bad without a good. The idea that everything is an equal and opposite reaction is true fractally. It is true in every way that you can think about it. And that's what divinity is. It's to see the whole. If you see the whole, your response can be nothing but compassion. It's the only response you can have. If your response is not compassion, then you're caught in duality. I'll say that again. If your response to a situation is not in compassion, then you are caught in duality. And that's what happens. We get caught in duality. It happens to us every day. The reason it happens to us is because the words themselves are caught in time. They are caught in duality. And because our thoughts are words, then if we're thinking in words, we're caught in duality. Yes, Michelle, kindness, radical acts of kindness. How could you have anything other than that if you see the whole? Even if somebody's upsetting you, to see the duality of it. Whatever it is, right? Just to find the forgiveness in it. Because there's nothing that exists. Whatever horrible thing you can think of, in order for it to exist, it has to have an opposite. For every hero, there's a villain. And for every villain, there's a hero. It could be no other way. It could be no other way. I've broken this down for you all the way back to singularity to show you how it could be no other way. And through that lens, you're awake. Now the trick to that is sustaining it, right? This is enlightenment. I'm pointing the door right now. So in each one of these live streams, I'm pointing to what it is, right? And we've just pointed to it. The door is right here and now, this place right here, right now, with all of its good things and all of its negative qualities. Both the good and the bad are necessary qualities for it to exist. So it is good. So all things are good. All is good. All things are dual. And because they're dual, they're good. Yes, even the hero's journey has an anti-hero. Fear. Fear. No fear, right, Paige? Absolutely no fear. And it's to realize if things are bad, then they're only going to get good. It could be no other way. Polarities. Yes. Polarities. No thing exists that isn't in polarity. Isn't that a beautiful concept to think about? That we've taken this how many 1,000-year-old debate and we've broken it down right here in about an hour to sit here right at the door of the eternal. Your consciousness, your imagination, because consciousness is such an abstract word. I think a lot of us don't have a easy time identifying with that. But it's easy to say my imagination, right? So my imagination and your imagination are the same imagination. How cool is that? It's the same imagination pretending to be me and pretending to be you. But really we're the same imagination. And our imagination, which is my imagination and your imagination, is older than dirt. It's older than Earth. It's older than the galaxy. It was here from the beginning, because it is the beginning. Pure Imagination Remix. Thank you for noticing, Bama. Thank you. I had a huge hit about, I don't know, how long has it been now? 2007. I had a #1 hit called Pure Imagination. I'm glad there's someone still alive to remember that song. Thank you very much. Yes. So are you guys enjoying this? Sitting here at the door, sitting here in the space of miracles, all miracle. The miracle of imagination, the miracle of now. And this now is ever changing. It's always changing into something else. And the ego is constantly trying to look at this change and make sense of it without just saying it's a miracle and it doesn't have to make sense. It's the ego trying to make sense of this, which makes such a disaster out of it. But it's just random stuff happening with no rhyme or reason, with no history, with no before or after, because both of those don't exist. outside of consciousness, correct? There's just imagination forever. There's only the imagination. And through the imagination, we see duality, and we can only be compassionate because we're seeing the whole. Therefore, the whole is love. Love is all there is. There isn't anything else but love. We can focus on something that isn't love, but that's to focus only on half of the picture. Love is all there is when you're seeing the full thing.